Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gothberg. Hello, Shipping Podcast lovers. Welcome to the 86th episode of the Shipping Podcast. I will be introducing you to an old friend of mine. Well, she's not that old, but she's an old friend. Her name is Synne Marie Mossevig, and she works as a consultant for the Maritime Advisory of DNVGL with environmental, technology and compliance. I met with Synne again when I was in Oslo on the 25th of October 2017. Alternative fuel. The discussion is going high and has been doing so for a while. How can the shipping industry run on something else but heavy fuel oil? Synne is an expert on battery. She used to be the managing director of the Maritime Battery Forum.com in Norway. And I think it's interesting to hear how she speaks about public procurement and how the public could actually influence which fuel they expect their suppliers to use when it comes to ferries and transports on behalf of the public. Synne is also speaking about implications and costs of regulations. That's interesting to think about as well. I would like to introduce you to Synne Marie Mossevig. Welcome to the Shipping Podcast. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Synne Mossevig. I'm 32. I work in the DNVGL with environmental technologies on ships.
So what is your background?
I'm a social economist, so a bit different from most people I work with, but I like to think that I bring a new perspective.
So did you study that at university or
here
in Oslo? Or?
I studied in Copenhagen, did a master's degree at the university in Copenhagen.
What do you study then? It's interesting.
Social economics.
Yeah, but what is that?
Social economics is if you think of you're trying to bake the biggest cake, depending on how much flour you have, how much sugar, how much butter, and you want to make the biggest cake and divide it in a good way. I think that's a good parallel for studying economics. You want to divide the goods in society in an efficient way and get as much cake as possible, get as much utility from the different ingredients as possible.
And how did you come in contact with shipping?
I got a summer job, a bit random. I had a buddy studying with me in Copenhagen who had a summer job here, and he knew they recruited more than just one. So he wondered if I wanted to work the same place, which was DNVGL, or at that time DNV. So I started out as a summer job in administration, pushing paper around with very nice colleagues. And that's how I got to know DNV. And I really like the organization. The purpose and the values of the organization are important to me. And then I got involved when I did my master's degree. I got some help from market intelligence here at DNVGL. And when I was doing my master's degree, they needed some help on a project, which was called Shipping 2020. And then I got some more info about Maritime and what's happening in Maritime when it comes to environmental technologies. And then when I was done with that, they offered me a job.
Smart. Smart of them.
Yeah, smart of them, thanks. Yeah, it wasn't deliberate. It was just a series of random events.
So what did you do then? What was your job when you started?
Much the same as I do now. I'm a consultant in maritime advisory in the DNVGL. And we do advisory work for different, mainly governmental organizations in Norway. So if the Ministry of Environment wants to know what are the consequences if we make a law on banning heavy fuel oil, or if we set technology requirements and that kind of thing, what are the effects on the environment and the costs? So we do that type of analysis for different governmental bodies. And we also do public procurement when it comes to ferries. So in 2014, the Norwegian government said that all ferries should be zero emission. And from then on, there's been a revolution in the Norwegian ferry business when it comes to the use of batteries, mainly.
So in that way, the regulations pushed the development.
Definitely. I think when it comes to public procurement, it's easier to do probably than working to get a regulation through. So they just said, we want zero emission ferries, and then the Norwegian Public Roads Administrations had to follow up.
So where are we on battery then?
Well, we're evolving. The first ferry line was electrified in 2015, I think. The ship was launched April 2015. And from then on, I think at the moment we probably have 10 or expecting around 10 new electric ferries in Norway.
And what are we talking about? Electric ferries? It sounds like it could be, to me, a ferry could be a rope-axe ferry, or it could be just from here to 20 meters behind that corner.
Yeah, it's probably around 5-kilometer stretches, 2 to 5 kilometers, and 120 cars, 400 passengers, yeah, approximately.
And they are all over Norway.
Of course, they're all over Norway. We have these great fjords, which are beautiful, but also makes it a bit difficult to get around sometimes. So we have 18 ferry stretches that are governed by the state, and then we have probably 180 stretches that are governed by the municipalities.
And how does it work? They charge when they are...
So they quite often they have a battery bank on quay, which charges the ship. So, and the ship charges all night, and then it goes from A to B all day and charges from the battery bank as the capacity of the battery is going towards zero.
So how big are the batteries? It sounds like that could be... How big is it? Like a building?
Probably the same as the room we're sitting in. And this is, what could this be? This is when I need to say I'm a social economist, not an engineer. This is probably 4 meters by 2.5 by 3 or something like that. Yeah, so they're quite big.
And where does the electricity come from?
From Norwegian hydropower. So it's clean energy, which means it's zero emission, at least close to.
So how is that? I mean, I'm not an engineer either. So how does that electricity get to where the battery is?
Through the Norwegian distribution network, the grid. Just the same as when you plug in your phone, basically.
But a little bit bigger battery.
Yeah, a little bit bigger. And sometimes we have to do some work, or there has to be done work at the quayside to make it possible to charge the amounts of energy that we need.
Are these batteries produced in Norway as well, or are they? Do you know?
No, I think most of the cells are produced not in Norway, but they're put together in Norway. And I think that has been maybe different from the electric car revolution, which has also happened in Norway. That I don't think Norway as a country has reaped a lot of benefits from that. But I think we've been better at it in the ferry industry. There's a lot of competence required to have a battery on a ship. I think we're world leading when it comes to that.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of the big ferries. How far away are we from them being charged by battery?
You're thinking like cruise lines, right?
Yeah.
Well, hybridization is definitely possible. I think the biggest batteries we find today are on the ships that travel between Rugby and Puttgarden. Not sure how large they are.
Well, in a way, I think the problem is that they are large, Because when I speak to ship owners, they say, well, the day that the size of the batteries comes down, because you can't have it on board if it's big, then it has an effect on the ship, of course. But when the size comes down, it will be more that are interested in using battery. It has to be that you can charge when you're at shore.
Yeah. I think that's, one of the main reasons why it has been possible to put batteries on the ship has been the increase in how much energy you can store on the same space, and also the prices going down. Prices have dropped. So that's definitely the prerequisite for being able to put them on the ship.
Was there a big interest from the industry when you started, or was interest there from the government side?
It wouldn't have been possible to get this on ferries without the government pushing, not at this speed, definitely not. And I think ferries are a good way of experimenting in some way, because they don't travel very far. They travel very regularly, and it's possible for the government to just ask for what they want, basically.
Yeah, I can see that.
Now the government are proceeding with new public roads administration in Norway. So back in 2014, we had a development competition, is what they called it, which meant that the different ferry companies were able to get a certain budget for coming up with a solution. And that's how we reached the first electric ferry. And now we're seeing that the new public roads administration are planning to do the same for hydrogen. It's also very interesting that they're very forward-leaning and making things happen. So it's an interesting field to be a part of, definitely. And it makes you feel like you have a purpose, and I don't feel as bad when I get on a plane because I feel like I'm saving the world when I work, so it's okay.
Okay. So how do you see the future of shipping in general?
Oh, good question. I think we'll probably continue as usual, the cyclical nature of it. I think that we have, maybe I'm colored by what I do when I say that I see a lot of forward-leaning companies that actually dare to think that new technologies can actually give you a benefit, make it easier, make it more cost-efficient to run a business. But then you also have the part of the industry that are waiting as long as they can to do anything before the regulations or, that need a push to actually do something.
Yeah, but I mean, as you know, you've been working with the macro analytics of shipping. There is a new generation coming in. A lot of people who are retiring now because they can't see the light in the tunnel yet. So that will have an impact. Digitalisation will have an impact. All this new technology is having an impact, like 3D printing and blockchain and all of that. I think it's really interesting and challenging future. The future is like that.
Yeah.
And I think it will change our industry to become more transparent and to be more collaborative.
Yeah. Yeah, we already see, just Skype has helped us a lot, traveling less. So we can have quiet meetings without having to go there all the time. And I think what you're saying about digitalization, when you can monitor more, makes it easier to use autonomous ships. And the more you know, the more you can plan in a good way, which also makes it easier to, especially for electrification, for the uptake of batteries on board ships. So I think that definitely will have an impact. And I hope that we get an uptake of technology that is in line with what we see in the rest of the world. That this is not, something where we also wait until the last minute to actually do anything. I think that people actually see the value and the benefits of the new technology.
Yeah, because shipping is contributing in so many different ways to the society and to the development. So we need to take our responsibility. And I think we do. And technique will probably help us do that.
Yeah, hopefully. But yeah, I'm optimistic. I think, as I said, that the part of shipping that I meet are usually the forward-leaning part.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
So we are often looked upon as the hidden industry.
Yeah.
How can we become more visible?
I think, because I mean, we are visible all the time. We have marine traffic, for instance. We have AIS data from ships that we can use. And I think that shows a very interesting map of, what are the trade patterns we see today and how they've transformed. Have they transformed? Are they just the same? And I don't know. I get the impression that at least some decades ago, people thought of shipping as cigars and limousines.
What do you mean by that?
No, that it has been an industry where some people have made a lot of money from speculation, that sort of thing. But they haven't seen, what's life like on board. That's a part of shipping that, as you say, it's hidden and we don't really know much about it.
Yeah, and we have a tendency to speak to each other about shipping, but not outside our own bubble.
It's fair. Yeah, that's true.
And we all love it. We love shipping so much, and we just want to talk about it all the time, constantly. But hardly anyone outside our own bubble knows anything about it.
No, that's true. That's true. Whenever people ask about work, it's not about the industry. It's more about the environmental aspects that are very hot at the moment.
And we are going to need the best talent there is out there for the next generation. And we will be competing with every other industry. And if they don't know that we are there and how many interesting jobs there are, they won't find us.
I think that's a very fair point, especially in these times where we see, even in my own organization, that there is a gap. In 10 years, we'll see that, okay, we don't have any, or very few, that were employed between 2014 and now, probably. So I was one of the few that came in just, before the oil price dropped, a couple of years before the oil price dropped. And then a lot of them have gone out of the shipping industry after the drop in the oil price. So I think that's, in Norway, that's what we see at the moment, definitely. And I think it's important. But I think there are so many good initiatives as well, like Ocean Talent Camp, for instance, in Oslo.
What is that?
That's a camp. I'm not sure who arranges it. I think that's Tom Kleppestø and Birgit Lioden and the environment at the Norwegian Shipping Association. I think that's an important part to, make shipping visible for the generations to come. So, and I also think Nord Shipping, of course, in Norway is a huge event. And I love how we're taking over Oslo city center with, ships at Aker Brygge and, making a bit of a ruckus down at Aker Brygge when Nord Shipping is going on.
Yeah, but that's only for a week every other year. So we need to be more visible the other weeks as well.
Yeah, maybe it should become an annual thing.
Well, I don't know about that. You should ask the people at Posidonia what they think about it.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't like it very much. No, but I think maybe we're not very good at, as I said, I had no idea that DNV existed before I started here.
And also, you are interested in the political side of it as well. All countries are represented at IMO by people from the government side. And if they don't know anything about shipping, then they can't wave our flag for us in a way. So we also need to get the politicians to understand what we contribute with and what we can do, and that there is so much goods that is carried by boats.
Yeah, I agree. I think in Norway we are quite visible, and politicians know that we that we exist. And as I said, I think there's so many good initiatives, so many clusters, and I think innovation, I think that's been a huge, we've had a huge impact by being innovative. And I think the clusters, especially the Norwegian centers of expertise, have been very important. I think the Norwegian politicians tend to say that we're world leading when it comes to environmental initiatives in shipping. Often they say that we have a goal of being leading, and then we already are, and then we continue to be leading the next 4 years, so lucky for them. But I think all the changes in the political agenda when it comes to environmental awareness and innovation has been good for the maritime industry in Norway. We're more visible now that technology and innovation and environment are more important words higher up on the political agenda.
Who would you be curious to listen to? Who do you think I should meet the next time with the shipping podcast?
Good question. I think I'd like to hear from someone who are working on environmental issues in another country within shipping. I'm not sure who that would be.
On the technical side or on the side that you are on with the...
Yeah, it could be either political or technical. Both would be interesting to hear.
Okay, I have interviewed a few, but I know some more that I want to sit down and have a chat with.
Yeah.
Thank you, Synne, for taking the time to speak to me. Thank you, Synne. I think it's an interesting time that we are in right now. I can see a lot of alternative fuels, and the discussion on battery is going high. Who knew? Who could have thought about that idea 10 years ago, 15 years ago? That a ship could actually run on battery. So many things that we don't know. And maybe that is for the best. I've realized something else that you don't know, maybe. I get a lot of questions. Who have you interviewed in the shipping podcast? And I realized that maybe it's hard to see and understand that there is a red thread in my choice of the people I want to interview. So I will try for the summer to sort of put them together, heading a topic that they are all speaking about. I have released 86 episodes of the shipping podcast. So there are 86 people to listen to. I often get the question, where should I start? What's the most interesting? And I can't really answer that question because it's up to you. I don't know what you would like to listen to. I think it's a variety of interesting people that I have interviewed. And I get so happy when I see that it's going quite all right for them. And now they can become more interesting to the general public when they go on the stock exchange, or if they got a patent, or if something's happening. And I also attract a lot of more interest from startups and from companies. And that's great, I think. We've got one interview left from my Oslo visit, and that's in pipeline for you. So, until the next time, from me to you, over and out. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a shipping podcast available and that they should download it and listen to the maritime professionals who are sharing their passion for the shipping industry.